Some say that we're reckless, they say we're much too young. Tell us to stop before we've begun. We've got to hold out to graduation. We'll try to hang on, Maxine. Hi everybody, welcome to Aimee Nolte Music. Today is my second episode in the My Favorite Song series. And I'm talking about my very favorite Donald Fagen song today, and it's Maxine. It's kind of hard for me to narrow one down, but if I really had to choose, and I do, I choose Maxine. I'm a huge fan of both Steely Dan and Donald Fagen's solo work. When Steely Dan took a break in the early 80s, Donald Fagen decided to go out on his own. Well, he almost went out on his own. He used the same producers that used to produce the same Steely Dan albums. He used many of the same musicians. He just didn't have Walter Becker at the time, who was dealing with his own issues and I think recovering from narcotics use. This was a chance for Donald Fagen to do a few new things. His album was called The Nightfly, and he said that it was largely autobiographical. So taking from his own experiences growing up in the late 50s or early 60s in suburban New Jersey, you can imagine a kind of world with bomb shelters and the Cold War and the expectation that technology would play a huge role in the future. He's a kid who feels like he wants to be a part of the jazz hipster kind of, maybe New York scene, but he's stuck out there in the suburbs. The man is telling him what to do. He has got to do what his parents say. And there's this whole kind of feeling of, very like Holden Caulfield kind of feeling, he wants to be authentic. He wants to be exploring and finding himself and spending time with the opposite sex with no rules made by anybody. That's where Maxine comes from, I think. It's this idea that he would really like to be able to spend time with this girl on his own terms. Another thing Donald Fagen was able to do on this album was to overdub almost everything. He recorded every part independent of it. Nothing was live. So they also recorded digitally, which was a first for Donald Fagen. They used a 3M, which was new technology at the time, and it apparently was breaking down all the time, which was frustrating for him. Also used drum machines largely. And I think that he was able to put a lot of the jazz elements that he did put into Steely Dan for sure. He and Walter Becker, Steely Dan is the most jazz of all the classic rock bands, in my opinion. So he'd already been incorporating those kind of elements, but now I think he just explored it more. I want to talk about the theory of this song. And to do that, there's a nice transcription online from Hans Caldaway.nl, and you can find it if you just search for Maxine vocal chart. He's done his own arrangement of it, and it's good. It's really good. So I didn't have to figure out a lot of it. I've referred to Hans. There's a few things that I think Hans added and a couple things that maybe he missed, but he might not have missed them. I think he was just making an arrangement, and I'm really thankful to you, Hans, for this transcription should you watch this video. The first thing that Donald Fagen does is that he has this beautiful, very romantic kind of intro, and it's not in G. Maxine's in G, but this intro it's not in G, not until the very end. And I don't know what key it's in, maybe E flat, maybe A flat, maybe D flat. It's in one of those flat keys. It doesn't really matter, but it's a different realm. It starts with F minor, B flat minor, E flat 7, D flat major, D flat 7, A flat major. Now we've got what sounds like it's going to be a 2-5 into G minor because this is an A half diminished chord, but it's not. And this happens sometimes, especially in jazz music. You hear what you think is going to da, go to the G minor, da, 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 but it doesn't. It goes to G major, da. And here we have a common device used if we're in the key of G major, which is to go to F sharp, half diminished, to B7, and then we think we're going to go to E minor, right? You think that it's going to do E minor. That's a common thing to do a minor 2-5 to the submedian, to the minor 6 chord. But it doesn't. I mean, it almost does. And this is the first kind of sneak attack, I think, by Donald Fagen. So you think, but this just kind of sneaks up on you. It's just a little bit sneaky, in my opinion, to not have an E minor here, but to have a C sharp half diminished. And to start a song on the sharp 4 half diminished chord, I think is really cool. And I mean, we do it to end songs a lot, but to start songs, to go to that sharp 4 half diminished chord, I think that's really, really clever. So there. Some say that we're reckless, and we move to a C9, maybe a C13 chord, which is cool, right? And it's got a sharp 11 in there in the melody. Reckless. Now we're A minor. They say we're much too. He just goes to an E chord here with a G sharp on the bottom. Young. And that's a kind of resolution that I wasn't expecting, but it feels very settled for a second and very beautiful. And they don't need to be extra notes. I think there's an F sharp in it, maybe an add 2. Young in the vocal arrangement. Right? Then we got the. Now we've got kind of a 2-5. Tell us to stop. That's A minor to D9 plus 11. And then this is common. It's like a 2-5 and then a 3-6 kind of. You think it's going to be before that's B minor, B half diminished with an F on the bottom. But then we make it fully minor instead of half diminished. Gone. So that's interesting, and it's like a B minor 11 chord, and then we take B flat 7 with a sharp 11, like in 13. That's really nice. And then I think we hear this going to A minor, right? And it does, but it's like a nice A minor sus or 11. We've got 2, and then here we've got F sharp. It's like a tritone substitution. I can play a very vanilla voicing, like B flat, D, E, A, if we were going to do a C7 chord, but it's like a tritone sub for a C7 chord, and we put the F sharp on the bottom, hold down, and we're back to B minor 11. 2, and this is probably my favorite part in the whole song, is the vocal arrangement right here. Graduation. He's got 3 minor 11 chords in a row. So B minor, B flat minor, A minor. I love those. And if I look at Hans's arrangement, which I think is pretty spot on right here, we've got that kind of a cluster over the B minor chord. It's F sharp, A, C sharp, D, E. And then same cluster, just move down a half step. So it takes a minor 9 chord with the 5 and the 3 and the 7 and the 9 and the 11 for every one of those. It's a 5-part arrangement. I kind of think that there's probably 6 voices on the recording, but sometimes I think some of them are doubled, and it doesn't matter too much. Anyway, I love this kind of minor 9 or minor 11 voicing that just moves down in half steps. The 11's the top note, by the way, in every case. It's really cool. And then we keep the chord, put a D on the bottom. Try to hang on. F7 plus 11, Maxine. All of those are cool chords worth discussing, but I want to step back for just a second. So this section happens 3 times because there are 3 verses, and I made this discovery last night. So I was playing along, just kind of trying to focus on what Donald Fagen's mindset might have been when he was writing this part, and we've got, tell us to stop before we've begun. Right? And when I played that, I heard something. I heard another song. I heard a little bit from Darn That Dream. You say you love me and then hold me tight. But when I wake, that one doesn't fit really. You're out of sight. Oh, darn that dream. Doesn't it sound like it? We've got that kind of like a 3-6-2-5 kind of sound that's happening, but instead in Darn That Dream, it does the exact same thing. It instead of going there, it walks down. And I just had this gut feeling that Donald Fagen liked Darn That Dream and wanted to use it in a song. That's my gut feeling. He might not have. And I went looking to see if anybody had discovered this on the internet, and I don't think anybody has that I could find anyway, or if I looked for interviews about Maxine, I couldn't really find any. So I don't know. But I do know that, he was a big fan of the jazz music, and it's very plausible that he could have, liked that so much in Darn That Dream, that sound. He just filled it out a little more with those, those really tasty chords. Now, one thing I love about all Steely Dan, and especially Donald Fagen's solo work, is that sometimes you just hear sneaky little things. If you're not paying close attention, you would never really notice them because they're just barely there. If you listen to the song Ruby Baby, for instance, there's this girl just kind of sighing and a little bit moaning in the background. You can just barely hear it. Those kind of little tiny touches, the moan, I don't know. In this song, I think it's Larry Carlton playing these tasty little fills. Let's listen to him for a second. Talk about life, the meaning of it. It's just one more thing that makes this extra special. I think he puts so much attention to detail on everything. We've got piano so far, maybe a little synth like a Rhodes or something. We've got very little guitar, just these little guitar fills. We've got organ underneath everything, which I think is really important. Every now and then there's like this cool little gospel-y "You'll be my señorita" undertone that you hear. I think we've got drum machine going on. You might, correct me if you think I'm wrong, but it's just a very simple drum pattern the whole time. And then, of course, we've got this 5 or 6 part vocal arrangement that Donald Fagen sings. The sentiment of the song, to me, is kind of the same as the Beach Boys' Wouldn't It Be Nice? Remember that? Wouldn't it be nice if we were older, then we wouldn't have to wait so long? And after having spent the day together, hold each other close the whole night long. This kind of sentiment, some say that we're reckless. They say we're much too young. They tell us to stop before we've begun. That's the man, right? That's his parents, authority. We don't want it. We've got to hold out till graduation, right? You feel like that when you're a kid. You want to hold out. If after graduation you're 18, that's when life begins, right? While the world is sleeping, we meet at Lincoln Hall, just a place downtown probably. We talk about life, the meaning of it all. That's very Holden Caulfield to me. Try to make sense of the suburban sprawl. Try to hold on, Maxine. And then there's this bridge that comes. And the bridge it's easier. It's not as complex as the rest of it, at least chord-wise. We have an E flat over F. So this is kind of reminiscent of the introduction, right? We're back into flat keys. And he dreams about Mexico City. Mexico City is like another world. It's nice this year, they say. So all of this, it's pretty standard, at least for a jazz progression. It's not too crazy. Here, this is nice. Say. And then this is actually a part in the arrangement that Hans did where I think he got it a little bit wrong, but he calls it a G minor major 9, or G minor with a major 7 and the 9. And I think he's almost right, but I don't think there's a G in this chord. I think it's more like a B flat major 7 with an augmented 5th. So it sounds like this. Nice this year, they say. Here it comes. Like that. That's what I hear. I don't hear that G in there. Could be. to E flat. You'll be my senorita. It's this whole dream about going to Mexico City. And jeans and pearls, but first, let's get off this highway. And then we do a little segue back, and we do the same kind of a thing for another verse yet. And this is where we start to hear the horns too. The horns come in. We got trombones, saxophones, trumpets, I think. We'll move up to Manhattan, right? Fill the place with friends. That's his dream life, Mexico City and also Manhattan. Which I think is really cool. It's like, I mean, he's a high school kid. He can have as many dreams as he wants, and he doesn't limit himself to just putting one dream in the song. He can put a few. So we got Mexico City, we got Steps of Lincoln Hall, right? But we've also got New York. Move up to Manhattan and fill the place with friends. We'll drive to the coast. I like this part. Then drive right back again. That's something you would say if you're in high school or when you're first in love. You don't even care where you go. You just drive somewhere and then you just drive right back. As long as you're with the person that you want to be with, that's all that matters. Here's the Beach Boys part. One day we'll wake up, make love, but till then. Like just this idea, you spend the day, you do everything you want together, you go to bed at night, you're together, you wake up, you're together. It's all very teenage, wistful. I love it. I think it's cool. And it's a nice part of the album. It's a nice addition to the album. You know, the rest of it kind of talks about these fantasies that he has with his friends and how he likes to listen to the local jazz station every night, Lester the Nightfly. It's like this, it's just this fantasy world. And when you listen to Donald Fagen's solo work, he just takes you, it's like listening to a storyteller. Every time I just kind of close my eyes and try to imagine all of the things that he's telling me. And I've tried to do that in my own work sometimes when I'm writing. You know, I try to take people on a little journey. I'm still learning. But I think, you know, what was he, 34 when he made this album? It's remarkable the way that he could reflect on his life and pull us into that world where he lived. I remember hearing it for the first time when I was about 16 or 17 years old, and it spoke to me then, and it speaks to me now. Just a quick little reshoot because I forgot to mention it earlier, but I can't make this video without talking about the fact that Donald Fagen got Michael Brecker to come in and lay down a beautiful solo over the bridge of this tune. And kudos to Donald Fagen for always hiring the hippest jazz horn players to play the solos on his albums. He always did. Play the end out for you because I want to talk about the ending just very briefly. One day we'll wake up, make love, but till then we'll try to hang on, Maxine. He's got the horns, and we end up in G like that. But he goes through all the flat keys again, just one more time to kind of like wrap it up, I think, and include a little bit of the intro, a little bit of the bridge where we were in flat keys. Where he goes from, you know, B flat major to E flat major to A flat major to G major. A whole bunch of major chords right there at the end. I think it's really hopeful and reminiscent, like I said, and nice. Back a few years ago, before I had nicer recording equipment, I made a whole arrangement. Well, I used Hans's, but I think I added a sixth part of what I thought, you know, it was included in the Donald Fagen arrangement. And I'll put a little link to that at the end of the video so you can see it. It was just made with my iPhone, but it's pretty nice. I played Rhodes on it and sang those 6 parts. The song was so dependent upon those tight vocal harmonies. I don't really want to sing and play just a solo version of it for you because I feel like it needs those harmonies, and it's a decent recording. So if you stopped at Steely Dan, I want to encourage you to check out all of Donald Fagen's solo albums. I love this one probably the most, and maybe Kamakiriad is my second favorite. But all of the work is very, very good, and I hope that you like it. Thanks for watching, everybody. Please don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends if you liked it. And I'll see you next time on Aimee Nolte Music.